Before you ever think about putting money into a company, there's one question you just have to ask. Can it actually survive the next year? Seriously, forget all the 5 year plans and the big, bold ambitions for a second. If a business can't pay its bills right now, nothing else matters. And the first, and maybe the quickest, way to get a read on that is by looking at one single number, the current ratio. So let's dive in. So, this all comes down to one key idea: liquidity. And no, we're not talking about profitability or how fast the company is growing. We're talking about something much more basic. It's about having enough cash, or things you can turn into cash quickly, to handle your bills as they show up. This brings us to the one question that really sits at the heart of all short-term financial health. Yep, that's pretty much the whole ballgame. Can this business cover all the debts it has to pay over the next 12 months, using only the assets it can turn into cash within that same 12 months? If the answer is no, well, you're looking at a company that could be in some serious, serious trouble. The current ratio is specifically designed to give us a clear, immediate signal to answer this exact question. I think the best way to think about it is like a company's annual physical. It's the first vital sign that investors, lenders, and even the company's own managers check. Now, it's not going to tell you the whole story, of course, but it gives you an instant snapshot of its operational health. It tells you whether the company is standing on solid ground, at least for the next year. Okay, so to really get our heads around this ratio, we've got to break it down into its two parts. It's really just a straightforward comparison between two very fundamental things: what the company owns that's easy to access, and what the company owes in the very near future. All right, first up on one side of the equation, we've got current assets. Put simply, these are all the resources a company expects to convert into cold, hard cash within 1 year. This is the pile of stuff they have to work with. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, because these things are not all created equal. Cash is cash, right? It's immediate. Accounts receivable, well, that's money your customers owe you, so you got to collect it first. But inventory, inventory is the tricky one. You have to find someone to buy your stuff, then you have to actually sell it, and then you have to collect the cash. It is often the least liquid of all these assets, and trust me, that little detail is going to be super important later on. And on the other side of that scale, that's where we find the current liabilities. This is the uh-oh pile. It's every single bill, debt, and payment the company absolutely has to make within the next 12 months. So what are we talking about here? Well, this is the money you owe your suppliers, it's this year's payments on your loans, and it's the salaries your employees have already earned but you haven't paid out yet. These are the bills that just keep coming, and you can't ignore them. And here's how we put it all together. It's a super simple formula. You just take everything in that resource pile and you divide it by everything in that bills to pay pile. The number you get is actually really powerful. It tells you for every $1 the company owes in the next year, how many dollars of short-term assets does it have ready to cover that bill. So a ratio of, say, 2.5 means it has $2.50 on hand for every $1 it owes. All right, so we've calculated a number. Now what? I mean, a number by itself is pretty useless, right? We need context. What does it actually mean? Is a bigger number always a better number? This right here is where we move from just doing math to doing real financial analysis. So here's the rule of thumb that most analysts use. If that ratio is below 1.0, that is a huge red flag. It literally means the company doesn't have enough cash-like assets to pay its upcoming bills. That's a big problem. The sweet spot, the healthy zone, is usually somewhere between 1.5 and 3.0. That shows you've got a nice safety cushion. But, and this is super important, a ratio that's too high can also be a problem. It might mean the company is just sitting on a pile of cash and not using it to grow. And this gets to the heart of the matter. Management is constantly walking this tightrope. If the ratio is too low, you risk not being able to pay your suppliers or your employees. Yikes. But if it's too high, you're letting all this capital just sit there doing nothing, when you could be investing it in new products, better technology, or expanding the business. It's a constant balancing act between being safe and being smart. But hold on. Before you go and apply that 1.5 to 3.0 rule to every company you see, there's a huge piece of the puzzle we're missing, and that is context, specifically the industry the company is in. A good current ratio is almost meaningless if you don't compare it to other companies in the same business. And wow, does this chart show you why? Just look at these averages. A discount store can be perfectly healthy with a ratio of just 1.11. Why? Because their whole business is about selling inventory super fast for cash. But look at a biotech company. They need a massive cash pile, a ratio over 8, because they might spend years on expensive research before they ever make a dime. Comparing the two is like comparing apples and, rocket ships. Context is everything. Okay, so we've established the current ratio is a great first look, a great snapshot. But here's the catch. Its biggest strength, how simple it is also its biggest weakness. It can hide some really critical details about the quality of a company's assets. Yeah, remember what we said earlier, how not all assets are the same? Well, the current ratio formula doesn't care. It treats $1 of cash exactly the same as $1 of, say, last season's inventory that might never sell. And that little assumption can hide a massive risk. This is where the pros bring out a tougher, more skeptical tool, the quick ratio. Some people call it the acid test, which is a pretty great name for it. Just look at the two formulas. The quick ratio does one very simple, very smart thing. It just yanks inventory right out of the equation. It asks a much harder question. If this company couldn't sell another single item from its warehouse, could it still pay its bills? And that gap, the difference between the current ratio and the quick ratio, well, that's where you find the real story. If a company has a current ratio of 3.0, which looks great, but its quick ratio is only 0.8, that tells you its safety is basically an illusion. It's completely dependent on selling its inventory. And if you're a company selling, say, fast fashion or tech gadgets that go out of date, that is a huge red flag the current ratio would never show you on its own. So let's bring this all home. What does this all mean for the folks actually running the company? For a smart management team, the current ratio isn't just some grade they get on a report card. No, it's an active tool they use to make critical strategic decisions. And it really all boils down to this one eternal trade-off. Every single dollar you keep in the bank as cash to keep your ratio high and safe is a dollar that you're not investing to make more money through growth. The real job of a chief financial officer is to constantly walk this tightrope, to be liquid enough to be safe, but efficient enough to be profitable. This quote just nails it. The number itself is just the start of the conversation. The real value of the current ratio is that it forces a company to ask itself some really tough questions. Are we using our money efficiently? How do we stack up against our competitors? And where are our real risks hiding? So the next time you see a company's current ratio, I want you to try to see past the number. See it for what it is, a window into that company's strategy. It's a single data point that tells a deep story about how that company chooses to balance the constant critical tension between safety and growth.